Okay, well, welcome everyone to the the back room at Tim J. Leary Studios. I'm gonna do this. We're here to talk about what artists do before they're famous. So that's me, all my art will be included. But I always start with my libation. Tonight I'm drinking a single malt Irish whiskey called Tyrconnell. A gift from my niece, whom I love dearly, especially now that she's given me Irish whiskey. But I loved her anyway. So, cheers. So, my idea for tonight's talk came about when I realized a few days ago, we're talking about the development of artistic styles, and I have seen over the years, all separately, what other artists have done before they're famous. And whenever I have seen that, there are a few people, some of whom we'll look at tonight, who are known for a particular style of art and credited sometimes with the development of that style of art or are instrumental in that. So a lot of this, to me, there's a difference between what the artist is doing and what the art critics and art historians are talking about. And so I'm not really sure what we'll see when we look at this, but I've selected these books because I want to do this. The first one that really struck me, and I'll start with this and see what we find out, is Mark Rothko, because he's famous for these squares, right, Eli? He's famous for that. And but let's see where don't have some things saved in here. I want to find a couple of really good pictures of the things that are recognizable as Rothko. Like this one here on this side. If you have never seen one of these in person, they sort of don't look anything like this. There's a depth and luminosity to his painting technique that created almost vibrating colors. They're really, really beautiful. He did several layers of thin coats of paint. These are done in oil and on canvas. So he's known for that, but stuff like this. I love these, and I've seen and have been able to sit in front of some of those works. But here's what struck me the other day. This is also his. So I'm not sure. What do we learn from this? I can see that there is some technique that he was using before that is still evident, I think, in the way he brushes the paint. Here's the Marcus Rothkovic was his given name, but he immigrated here around World War II, and so this is a much different kind of image. I think it's really compelling. I think it's really interesting, and it preceded this kind of, they're calling it surrealism. I agree. This is the piece I was looking for. Which I found to be absolutely marvelous. The curves and the sweep of those lines is just really compelling, but also the way he layers his paint is very interesting. Is this all paint? It's watercolor ink on paper. Watercolor and ink on paper. So interesting. So we can speculate, right? How does he get from this to the things he's famous for? Here is another example, however, of a step in between. This is a little more abstract from what he did before, but it's not the simplicity of the simple squares. Really interesting. I love the colors that he's chosen here and the way he applies them. But then he makes his way to this. And this is how he becomes famous. And these are massive and beautiful, and I'm sure he understood a whole lot of stuff that I don't in regard to that. Another artist who is known for something other than this work, and I know I've shown this book a couple of times because it was shared with me by Judith, my friend Judith. Ellsworth Kelly is known for large canvases of a single color. Some people understand it, some people don't. That's another case of you have to walk into a gallery where there are 2 or 3 of his paintings to really understand what it was he was trying to say. But in between that and before that and during that, he was doing this sort of stuff. These simple line drawings are so elegant. I think his line is so elegant. Here, that one, and this one is interesting too. They're all plant-based, all plant drawings, but simple. And I have experimented with doing these sort of simple linear drawings myself, and I found it really satisfying because it's the shape and the line that's interesting here. So he's doing this at the same time as he's painting big plain canvases, big solid color canvases. Here's something with a little color in it. I don't know if I can see over there what kind of paint that is.
Watercolor.
It's watercolor. Okay, watercolor. That might have been what I guessed, but I didn't. So that's Ellsworth Kelly. So let's look at Miro. Miro being one of my favorites. The first time I saw something of Miro's that was not what he's famous for. So he's famous for stuff like this. Surrealism, lines, images, and plain, simple, almost looking juvenile. But I've studied these and I look at them and I think, well, how could I do something different about that? Would I change anything? Not a chance. Not a chance. They're wonderful. But before that, he did stuff like this. So how did he get from one to the other? This portrait here is what I wanted to show. He also did these large landscapes. Lots of detail, but I don't know. I must have one with colors in it, but I don't know where it is in this book. But he did a couple of those, and this actually has some surrealism going on in here, the way the images come together in that one. But the intriguing thing is the more simple, and if I go even earlier, this is like student work of his. So pencil drawings, possibly even done for classes. I'm not sure about that, but these are from 1906, 7, 8, and 8. So, all right, so what is it telling us? What does it mean? Aside from these artists spend their whole lives making art, so it ought to change. I think some of it is they're looking for ways to develop, to get recognized, to get noticed, to develop their ideas. They're involved in the whole thing of the movements of art, but I believe that most of the ideas about art movements come from the art critics. They're often named by the art critics. So when the artists come together, they might have a name for something that they're doing, but things like cubism or whatever, I think names like that come from the critics when they mount a show at a reputable gallery. So Diebenkorn is another example for me, because I love Diebenkorn when he does stuff like this. This one is Albuquerque. Interesting to me, these things, because, oops, oh no. It's his color palettes here that can help you recognize where these images were created. His Ocean Park series looks like a beach town to me, even though there are no recognizable objects in them. But prior to that, there's something a little more of objects, as you can see as I'm flipping back. But here we have, this top one is Edward Hopper, but the bottom one, it looks very much alike, like it, is a Diebenkorn. So he's looking to other artists, you can tell, I think, that he's looking to other artists and getting some reference material and some ideas from them. Sometimes I think copying a style can be very instructive. I did something like that when I was back in 2002, I think it was, and I was completing a degree in art therapy, working at a nursing home as an art therapist, and I had a patient who could only stab the paper. He would take markers and he would stab the paper, but he made patterns. And so I thought I needed to try and learn a little bit about what he was doing and maybe get a little understanding. And so I copied what he was doing so that I could see what did it feel like. The only reason he was doing that is because he had had stroke, and it was the only thing he was physically capable of doing. And this over here is Diebenkorn. And so again, this is a simple drawing, so different from what he's known for. And so much like a lot of other artists, right? At least that's what appears to me. So let's go to the infamous Jackson Pollock, known again for splattered paintings. Action drawing, this is called. When I was doing docent tours, I would wave my arm around when talking about this kind of abstract expressionism, because that's a lot of how this is described. He would find ways to show his gestures by splattering paint. So interesting and fascinating and quite beautiful, but look at this. Who knew he could do this sort of stuff too? And he would have done this sooner. So it's a little bit in development too. You can see how he's coming along and learning his craft, and I don't know, I'm saying more than I really know. Now, it doesn't tell me immediately what these are, but you don't show up on the scene and start to do this. I can remember when I was in my 20s, I thought that maybe I could do that. I could show up on the scene and I could start to splatter paint or do whatever it was I wanted to do, and I would be able to do it. But that, of course, is not the case. You have to try a couple of different things, as I did along the way. So that's quite delicious. So I'm always interested in Andy Warhol's early work, because Andy Warhol, known for his portraits of famous people and sometimes infamous people, and also his soup cans and things like that. That's the thing where he became famous, in his soup can. But before that, he did graphic arts, And so he's also known, you know, some of his followers know that he drew shoes, and these would be used for advertising. A lot of his work showed up in window displays on Fifth Avenue on occasion. When people will say he did windows, and I guess as a former visual merchandiser, I might take exception to that and say that his work was featured in window displays. A little fine point, because it doesn't look to me, when I've seen pictures of those, and there aren't any in this book, that he was actually doing the whole window display and creating that. So that's Andy Warhol. I have a couple more to go here, but I want to also, and then Kandinsky, known for this, and this is the stuff that I love of his, this geometric stuff, and let me move over here so you can see how much I love this kind of work. His is much more complex and more interesting than mine, but I've done a series of these on paper in colored pencil and ink, and I love doing them. They're so much fun. So this is what he's famous for, but prior to that, this is one of the stages he went through. As he was going from his early work, I don't think there's anything really early here that shows more average conventional artwork. But here you can recognize where we are. Here you have to work a little harder to see what it is as he's going through his stages. So he's going through his stages. He's experimenting and he's playing with the artwork. And I think that's pretty interesting. I like to talk about Picasso. Because Picasso, what I often say about Picasso, hello Eli. What I often say about Picasso is that he's not necessarily my favorite artist, but he is certainly one of the most important artists of the 20th century. He really changed art a lot, and some of his work is incredible, just incredible. So here it is. Look at this. These are early drawings, and they're just drawings, right? But as he moved along in his work, oh, that's the Cubism. I think I have something earlier than that. You can begin to see some of his influence. He was influenced by African art, and you can see that in the way he constructed faces, like these. And then the Cubism was the next step for him. Beyond that, he got to these, which are actually my favorites of his, these portraits. I think they're really fascinating. I could look at them for hours and really not be finished looking. We had the good fortune of going to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona one time, and there was a vase of flowers, a realistic painting of his of a vase of flowers, and an abstracted painting of a vase of flowers, all displayed together. And of course, the reason for that would be that the abstracted one, which didn't really look exactly like the vase of flowers, did a better job of conveying the sense of those flowers and the feeling of what those flowers looked like to me. It was a very instructive moment. How's my time here? How am I doing with time? Okay. So quickly, I wanted to show some of George Seurat's work. He did these in crayon. These were preparatory drawings. So on a heavy textured nubby paper. Some of them recognizable. In this book, here we go. In the book, there's also, well, I don't know if I can find it. I know I've shown it before, actually. He used this style of drawing to develop the characters in his paintings. So in the Grand Jot, Sunday of the Grand Jot, his figures were in drawings like this before they made their way to the canvas. So I thought, since I'm looking at the less mature work of these artists, let me show some of my own less mature work. So I've dug up some stuff. So in my creative life, I have, I started out as a child in my early 20s, and this is something from a drawing class that I did in probably 1975 of a chair. I still have chairs that look like that. I think we've all had chairs that look like that. In between that year and my decision to do my fine art. So this was the subject of a grand midlife crisis. But prior to that, I was doing window displays. And so here are some of the window displays. This would have been, so that would have been in the 70s. This would have been what I was doing in the 80s. In this window, I was at the Yale Co-op in New Haven. These books on these seats are all plays written by Yale authors that I believe they were also originally produced in New Haven. And I think I was selling the raincoat in this one. Some Christmas displays that I did in New Haven. And I think this will be the last. I always love this one because there's, it's the invisible man again. It's the hat and the gloves and the horn floating, playing for this woman in here. So then I had an elaborate midlife crisis, and I started working again on studying art a little more. This is a piece from the 90s, the early to mid 90s, 94, I think I did this, when I was working on my BA, and it was all part of the midlife crisis. And then I wanted to show, if I have time, some pictures from here. Right after I did that last drawing, come on, here we go. So this is, I'll show this. Sorry. How do I go to full screen? Here it is. Okay. So the I was doing a project where I took canvases. I had very little training prior to this. And so I was doing earth, air, fire, and water. I was into this spirituality, I still am. Quite a bit, though, quite strongly at this point. And I was very unhappy with the way the canvases were turning out. And I said to a friend, "Oh my God, I just want to burn these canvases." She looked at me, she said, well, she said, and maybe that's what you should do. So Stu and I went to the beach and decided to return these 4 paintings to the earth. So this is earth going into the earth. Here's air flying in the air above the surf. There. And here is water. We threw this canvas into the surf, and Stu took the photographs. So, and then this one is fire. There was somebody who had a bonfire on the beach, And so when they were getting ready to leave, I said, oh my God, can I borrow your bonfire? And we set this canvas on fire. So thank you to Teresa Lahane for telling me to burn my paintings, because the performance and the photographs became the art, not the paintings. So that's one. And then another project I was very happy with, oh, here we go again. Okay, good. Another project this wants to do that. I was very proud of is then at the end of my time in the nursing home, a group of students from FIDM and myself and the art therapist that I worked with at the VA nursing home and the residents of the nursing home all got together and created a mural to go in front of a nurse's station. So this is part of the process. The Roy Kunkel, we had a drawing, we put it on transparencies, he traced the shadows onto the panels, and then we painted. And so here are some of the people are staff, some of them are residents. You might note the color of my hair at that point in time. Here are some students helping out. We tried to make it as much paint by numbers as we could so that everybody could participate. This lady on the right here was a little bit of a ringer. She was a painter who was able to repair mistakes as we went along. And we just worked in acrylic on a thin wood panel. Here's one of the days we worked here, and I remember some of these wonderful people. Here we are showing them their handiwork that same day. And two of the panels going together. And then finally, this is what we created, this 4-panel mural. And the purpose of it was to differentiate which floor you were on. When the elevator opened, you couldn't tell what floor you were on. So that was the reason we did that. So that's that. I think that's that. I had some other things, but I don't think it's worth looking at. So the last thing I want to show you, because I said in my email I had another painting. I have been working on a painting for my dear friend, and this is the painting is done. I have a few. I have to sign it yet, but I want to show it to you because she just saw it this evening. It's an abstraction of an abstraction. I did a drawing of the local mountains. I did an abstract drawing in colored pencil years ago, and now I've taken that image and I've moved it into a painting. So follow me. Who's out there? Anybody? Somebody you know? Where's my camera? Okay. Not very good light. I'll move it back. Can you see it on the camera all right? Okay. So this top line is directly from my original drawing of the local mountains. There are such beautiful shadows cast and so many hints of color that are seen here in the Coachella Valley in Palm Springs. And this was done, I was near the corner of Ramon and Sunrise, if you know where that is, and this was what I saw. And so that's my painting. So, all right. It's time for us to have our evening art walk. Thanks everybody for listening. If you're local here in Palm Springs, we'll be here for a while, so come on by. Eli's going home in a minute. If you want to come visit, you have to hurry up. So, He's anxious to talk to somebody out there. All right. Well, thank you so much. Good night.